He said it like he was ordering takeout. No hesitation, no shame. 80% for Rail's future. 20% for your father. It's that simple. The kitchen was quiet, except for the ticking clock and the slow drip of the faucet I'd asked him to fix 3 months ago. Tomas leaned back in his chair, hands folded over his stomach like a king settling debts. Rail was somewhere down the hall, probably in bed, headphones on, scrolling through shoes he couldn't afford, at least not on the money he made himself. I looked at my father. Same stained t-shirt, same expectant smirk. I stirred my coffee and said nothing for a long moment. He thought I was calculating that I'd protest, maybe bargain. Instead, I laughed. It came out sharp, sudden, even surprised me. He blinked. What's funny? I wiped the corner of my eye. Nothing, I said. Only that I've been giving you both the best of me for years. My time, my money, my silence. And now you think you can divide me like a grocery list. Tomas sat up. We're family. Your brother needs to go to school. I need to keep this house running. It's not that complicated, Acela. You have more than enough. No, I said and stood. You have had more than enough of me. I picked up my cup and walked toward my room. Behind me, his voice followed. You're being dramatic. I didn't answer. I didn't owe him the performance. In my room, I opened the closet and pulled out a suitcase. Not because I was leaving tonight, but because something had shifted. Not a flare of rage, but something colder, steadier. The kind of feeling that doesn't burn out. The kind that turns into movement. I zipped it shut and left it by the door. I knew then that the next chapter of my life wouldn't be about staying. It would be about remembering when exactly I stopped asking permission to leave. The night my mother left, she promised it was temporary. She stood by the front door with a rolling suitcase, hair pulled tight, voice even tighter. Just for a few months, mija. I'll send money. We'll get ahead. She kissed my cheek like it was a favor, not a goodbye. I was 14. Rail was 9. Tomas didn't even walk her out, just stayed on the couch flipping channels like none of it mattered. A few months became a year, then 5. Then we stopped marking the calendar. By the time I was 16, I knew how to cook Rail's favorite breakfast, fill out his school forms, check for fevers, and keep the lights from being shut off. Tomas would call it stepping up, but it felt more like getting dragged forward while everyone else stepped back. He stopped working not long after Mom left. Said his back hurt. Then it was his knees. Then it was, why should I bust my ass when your mother sends money? Eventually, even the remittances slowed, and still he didn't move. At 18, I got a job folding clothes at a department store. First paycheck, Tomas held out his hand and said, "We're a team here." I gave it over. Rent, groceries, cable, beer, whatever. Kept the house upright and him sitting down. Rail, he was the golden one, the creative one, always needing the newest headphones, phone upgrade, shoes that cost more than my weekly hours. I tried asking Tomas if maybe Rail should contribute too. He chuckled and cracked open a beer. Let your brother live. You already had your chance. I didn't know what he meant by that. My chance at what? Sleep? College? Silence? The house was small. Our walls were paper thin. I heard everything. Rail sneaking in late, Tomas talking about me like I was some stern wife instead of his daughter. Like my discipline was a flaw instead of the only reason we weren't buried in debt. I remember once standing in the hallway with a wet towel in my hands, listening to them laugh over something stupid. I felt like a ghost, still warm, still moving, but completely invisible. And even then, I stayed because I thought that's what family meant. You hold the roof up no matter how hard it leans on you. But maybe I was never holding it up. Maybe I was just keeping myself under it, waiting for it to fall. That suitcase by the door, it wasn't fear anymore. It was a signal. And the next day, I'd hear something that made the decision even clearer. I never meant to stay at the job that long. It started as a way out, any out. Entry-level inventory assistant at a food logistics company. I showed up early, stayed late, said thank you more than I needed to. 5 years in, I'd worked my way to logistics lead, then supervisor. By the 7th year, I was overseeing regional shipments and managing people who used to call me kid. The raises came in steady steps. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, But the money added up, and still, I never told anyone at home. Every payday, I withdrew the same amount I made back when I was 19. I handed it to Tomas in a plain envelope and let him believe that was all there was. He'd nod sometimes, grunt a thank you if he was in a decent mood. Rail never asked where I worked. I don't think he even knew the name of the company. I opened a separate savings account under a different bank, a different login, one Tomas couldn't guess. It was small at first, a few hundred, then a few thousand. I watched the numbers rise the way some people watch the tide. At home, nothing changed. Same cracked tile, same second-hand couch, same empty promises. I started using words like overtime and cut hours when I needed space, and they never questioned it. Maybe they didn't care enough to. I ate lunch alone most days, but on a rare break, I ran into Amara from HR. We used to work the floor together before she moved up. She smiled when she saw me. Still surviving, she joked. More or less. She leaned in, more serious now. You always had a good head. But girl, you carry that family like it's a cross. I didn't answer, just chewed slower. She watched me for a second. Then, love isn't supposed to feel like servitude. I laughed because that's what I do when things hit too deep. But it stayed with me on the drive home, while folding laundry, while pretending not to hear Rail through the wall asking for another $40 for something important. That night, I transferred more into the savings account. It wasn't just money I was collecting. It was options. And a few weeks later, when I accidentally left something on my desk, those options would be exposed faster than I was ready for. It was a mistake, a small one I wouldn't usually make. I'd printed a recent pay stub for a bank verification, left it on my desk instead of sliding it into the usual folder under my mattress. I told myself I'd file it that night, but I got home late, tossed my bag on the bed, and forgot. The next day, Rail was waiting in the hallway, arms crossed, face flushed with something between rage and disbelief. "This what they pay you," he said, waving the paper like it was evidence of a crime. I didn't answer. He already knew. "So, you've been hoarding while we struggle?" His voice cracked like he couldn't decide if he wanted to cry or scream. I stepped past him. "That's none of your business." He followed me. "You live here, don't you? You eat our food, sit on our couch, and you've been sitting on money." Before I could speak again, Tomas was at the kitchen table, reading the stub himself. His eyes narrowed. "This real?" he asked. I nodded once. He slammed his hand down. "You selfish girl. Rail wants college. I need help keeping this house up. And you're stacking cash while pretending we're scraping by." "You never asked," I said quietly. "You just assumed I'd stay broke for your convenience." Tomas stood, chest puffed like it used to mean something. "Well, now it changes. From now on, 80% of that goes to Rail. He's got dreams, a future. And the other 20%, I've earned that for keeping this family together." The silence in the room was heavy, like a lid closing on something hot. I looked at Rail. He didn't flinch. He actually looked proud. That's when it happened. Not anger, not fear, just stillness, like a clock stopping. Something inside me went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that keeps the peace, the kind that builds walls. I didn't argue, didn't yell, just walked to my room and shut the door. If they thought money was control, they were about to learn what happens when the one holding the roof up finally lets go. And the next morning, I opened the closet and pulled the suitcase all the way out. I packed slowly, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to feel every fold, every click of the suitcase zipper. I wasn't just filling a bag. I was naming what was mine. Clothes I'd bought on clearance, a chip mug from my first promotion, the journal no one knew I kept. I didn't take much, just enough to live. The rest I left behind, worn-out blankets, hand-me-down guilt, the stories they told about who I was supposed to be. By midnight, the house was still. Rail's door was shut. Tomas had passed out on the couch, the TV flashing blue light across his face. I slipped the old keys from my ring and placed them on the kitchen counter. No farewell. I was almost to the door when he stirred. His eyes opened, then narrowed. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" I didn't stop walking. He sat up. "You're abandoning your family." That word again. Family. Like it was supposed to tether me. I turned the knob, then looked at him over my shoulder. No, I'm releasing myself from the idea that I ever had one. He stood, unsteady but angry. You'll come crawling back. Don't think we'll be here waiting. I didn't answer. The air outside was cool, not dramatic. No storm, no sirens, just the soft thud of my boots on the driveway and the night breathing steady around me. I drove to the small studio I'd already paid first and last month's rent for, a quiet corner unit above a shuttered bakery. The stairs creaked, and the walls needed paint, but the space was mine. I set my suitcase down, sat on the floor, and leaned against the wall. No one yelling from the other room. No one asking where the money was, just silence. Not the kind I used to fear, but the kind that finally gave me room to hear myself think. The next morning, I bought a real mattress. Nothing fancy, just one that didn't sag in the middle. I made coffee in a cheap drip machine and drank it on the floor. It tasted like something I hadn't known I missed. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without waking once. And 3 months later, when the phone rang close to midnight, I almost didn't answer. It was 11:04 p.m. I was brushing my teeth, half listening to an old playlist humming from the corner speaker when the phone rang. Unknown number, but something about the timing told me exactly who it was. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. I answered on the third call. Isela, Rail's voice was tight, desperate. Please don't hang up. I didn't say anything. We're getting evicted, he rushed. The notice is final. They're coming Monday. We thought we had more time, but his voice cracked. We don't have anywhere to go. I sat down on the edge of my bed, towel still around my neck. Please, he said again. You have money. Just help us cover this month. After that, we'll figure it out. A pause. Then another voice grabbed the phone. Tomas, you think you can just walk out and leave us to drown? His voice was full of the same fire he used when I was late with dinner, or didn't fold the towels the way he liked. We gave you a home, our roof, a family. You owe us. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the lie was so worn down, it couldn't hold its shape anymore. I bought the food, I said. I paid the bills. That roof, it stayed up because I kept handing you my paycheck and shutting my mouth. He tried to cut in, but I kept going. You gave me silence. You gave me shame. You gave me 100 reasons to leave and not one to come back. There was a beat of stunned quiet. You're not like this, Rail whispered in the background. You've always been the one who held it together. Exactly, I said. I held it. Now you learn what happens when I let go. And then I hung up. The silence afterward didn't feel cruel. It felt earned. And 2 weeks later, when another call came, this time from Texas, I didn't recognize the number until I heard her voice. The voice was older than I remembered, slower, but still sharp around the edges. Like time had softened her but not changed her. Isela, she said. It's your mother. I didn't say anything. She sighed. I heard what happened. Tomas and Rail, they told me. How could you leave them like that? My jaw clenched. You want to know how? Don't get defensive, she cut in. I'm trying to understand. They're your family. No, I said. They were your family. I was the fill-in, the backup plan when you left and never came back. She went quiet for a moment. Then, with forced calm, I had to leave. You know that. I did it for us. You did it for money, I said. And maybe that was fair. But you didn't call for birthdays. You didn't come back when Rail failed 2 grades or when I got pneumonia. You didn't ask if I was okay. You asked if the bills were paid. That's not true. It is, I said. And I did everything you asked. I kept the house together. I stayed when I shouldn't have. I raised him while Dad drank, and you sent checks with no return address. And now you want to ask me why I left. She breathed in sharply. Still, you should have stayed. Those words hit harder than the silence before them. Not because they surprised me, but because they didn't. I stared at the wall in front of me. Not angry, not even sad. Just done. I'm not your replacement, I said. I was your daughter. And now I'm just done. Isela, I didn't wait for the rest. I ended the call. Then I pulled up her number, pressed down on the contact, and hit block. There was no satisfaction, no rush of power, just the quiet relief of one less weight I had to carry. Later that night, I made tea. I sat by the window with the curtain open, watching the streetlights blink on, and when I got into bed, I slept with both arms above the blankets, like I didn't need to guard anything anymore. In the morning, I checked my savings account. I moved a little into my travel fund. I'd been thinking about Oregon. And exactly 1 year from the night I walked out, I would finally answer the question I'd been afraid to ask. What does a life feel like when it actually belongs to you? It's been a year. Rail works at a tire shop during the day and delivers groceries at night. Tomas drives for Uber in the mornings and naps through the afternoons. They moved to a smaller apartment near the bus depot. No backyard, no couch, no beer fridge, just walls and rent due. I don't know this because I asked. I know it because silence doesn't stop people from posting. The updates come like little postcards I never requested. A tagged photo here, a complaint thread there. They're surviving now. Not because they changed, but because they had no choice. Me, I still live in the studio over the bakery. The paint is still peeling, but the books on my shelf are mine. So are the mornings, slow and soft, filled with lavender tea and sun spilling through the curtain. I added more plants. They don't talk back. They don't demand anything. They just grow when I water them. On Sundays, I walk to the farmer's market, pick out vegetables I don't always know how to cook, and eat breakfast alone without explaining why that's enough. I don't go home for holidays. I don't send updates. I don't call. Some people might say that's cold, but I think it's just accurate. Sometimes I journal. Not every day, but when the silence feels big and full instead of empty, I write little truths that I never got to say out loud. Like this one, they say, peace is forgiveness. But I think it's just not having to explain yourself anymore. I reread that line last night, and I realized something. They never really loved me. They loved the version of me who gave until it hurt, who didn't say no, who filled the gaps without being asked. But I'm not that girl anymore. Now I say no. Now I leave. Now I live without shrinking. And that version of me, she's not waiting to be understood. She's waiting for the next chapter.